on the stage of the Tallinn Digital Summit. Of course, we have just one of our panelists being mic'd up and is going to join us to stage. Well, yes, indeed, Sandra, the battlefield of tomorrow is being coded today, a perspective which almost seems as political sci-fi when war is literally back in Europe geographically. And yet, AI and autonomous systems do augment military capabilities in real time in war and conflict zones across the world. And as breakthrough tech-powered weapon and defense tools have moved from concept to reality, well, how do we balance kinetic and tactical effectiveness with ethical imperatives? We'll dive into the present and future of DefenceTech with our next guest, Kadi. You're the Director of European Engagement at Helsing AI, and your tagline actually is really interesting, artificial intelligence to serve our democracies. I want to dive in this tagline with you, of course, and the purpose of AI serving democracies. Kusti, Salm, you actually join us, fresh from actually the airport. I do understand. You're the CEO of Frankenburg Technologies, and you're betting on, quote, tech to win the war, redefining air defense technology solutions for national defense and critical infrastructure. You currently operating in Estonia, Latvia, and of course, Ukraine. And Andrea Bugar, your SVP HO Defense, Digital Germany and International Airbus Defense and Space GmbH. That's a very long title, but you have an amazing story to dive in. And that's actually what I want to do right now, because we're going to dive into examples so we can have a better idea of how tech is actually empowering defense teams and the military on the battlefield, but not even on the battlefield, because actually what you're working on with your team, Andrea, right here, right now, are solutions that are currently being developed to provide to governments and defense departments. We're going to dive with you into something quite amazing. It's called Combat Cloud.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here and to talk about something we are working on and is, of course, key for our future. And I think the slides are looking a bit strange. It's only up here. Okay.
We still have slides. Well,
okay. So moving on. So the if it works,
it might. Well, technology now.
No. Okay. Yeah. So. Unfortunately, today military operations call for collaborative, more efficient and digitized, secure, cyber-resilient battle space across land, air, maritime and space domains. It's not anymore like in the past when really Navy, Army and Air Force were doing their things totally separated in most cases. And the collaboration is key for the future mission management and smart decision support. Military operations will require higher flexibility and mobility, increased operational tempo, like in the past, it took sometimes days to define and agree on a mission. Now it has to be really on time. It requires seamless collaboration within and across all domains. They will be carried out in a complex environment which requires agile and fast decision-making, coordinated interactions across all domains in order to achieve common mission goals and effects. Multi-domain superiority will only be achieved through complete situational awareness based on data and advanced analytics. Milliseconds will make the decisive difference between survival and destruction in a contested military environment. Therefore, future warfighting requires a far higher degree of automatization and integration throughout the mission cycle. The multi-domain combat cloud accelerating the C2 cycle. C2 stands for Command and Control. To tackle these challenges, we from Airbus Defence and Space are working on a multi-domain combat cloud. And what do we mean by a multi-domain combat cloud? So it's not really what we compare as a commercial cloud. It's really a bit more complex and has different requirements.
Hopefully, it's a little bit more complex than that.
And what will be the operational benefit? So what is key? It's a dot connectivity, a dot-based elaboration of a cloud environment, and therefore far more than we just see for a network-attached cloud environment for storage of valuable data. we strive for connecting all the actors from human to machine. Western forces need to accelerate the operational tempo by completing, and maybe as you're not all military, what is a word you will hear more often in this context is observe, orient, decide, and act. It is the so-called ODA loop, and this one has to be better and faster than the opponent to take control of the situation. Agility can overcome an opponent whose forces constitute a complex adaptive system. And the multi-domain combat cloud will speed up the ODA loop by providing common situational awareness through the instantaneous capturing, sharing, merging, and processing of massive amounts of data from all connected, manned and unmanned platforms, by supplying predictive intelligence, by allowing mission planning and replanning, and by enabling distributed decision-making and collaborative combat. When we are able to share right information at the right time in the right place, it provides us decisional superiority. Such system of systems will provide flexible, reactive, and resistant kill chain. Functional capabilities such as radar, jammers, and missiles, formerly hosted on a specific platform like a fighter aircraft, can now be broken down into sensing, effecting, and command and control elements forming actionable nodes. Such actionable nodes can be categorized using the ODA loop construct just presented. They are simultaneously and/or alternatively observation nodes, orientation nodes, decision nodes, and action ones, enabled to be advanced data links connected to different platforms. So what do we mean by multi-domain combat cloud? The multi-domain combat cloud is decentralized, cyber-resilient, collaborative information network across air, land, maritime, space, and cyber domains using hybrid cloud-based technology. The aim is to enhance situational awareness, decision support, and connectivity with stronger cyber resilience. So the combat cloud enhances the defense power by really connecting the battlefield, by connecting all the dots together to enable real-time exchanges and therefore a fast decision process. And of course, strong effectiveness. So at Airbus Defence and Space, we believe that achieving this vision of fighting in a multi-domain or joint all-domain environment with cutting-edge technology requires an integrative and incremental approach with full transparency. Mm-hmm. And of course, what is key, we cannot leave the current assets, and it will not be a total change of all the system. That means we need to make sure that we also, the current platforms which are in operation, are integrated in this multi-domain combat cloud system. And they will be transferred from a coordinated process to a platform agnostic and cooperative process, while still ensuring that we use all existing systems currently in all the forces. And I hope by this we can give now a good start for a discussion.
Yeah, I mean, totally, because so now we do understand how actually a lot of different nuanced and a lot of different layers of tech and defense tech do actually operate into one military operation, and how can it also interoperate? Because there is a lot of different layers of technology out there, and maybe a government or a military department is going to choose several different companies to operate various different parts of its defense system, and then they need one place to actually be able to, manage it all. So that's definitely what you are willing to do at Airbus with this multi-domain combat cloud. And now, Kusti, actually tech to win the war. Well, that's quite a catchy, but I want to dive into it and try to understand really what it's all about. Because at Frankenburg Technologies, you're actually providing those multi-layers of defense tech. But how do they, again, operate? What are they all about?
Well, thank you very much. And first of all, thank you for the invitation for this incredible flagship event in Tallinn. So we're very fortunate to be here. The way we think in Frankenburg in the strategic situation is fairly simple. The time is over for preparing, for contributing, for securing, if we want to confront Russians, Chinese, and other murderers of the world, we need to build something that will deter them militarily. And the only thing that deter people in the war is the prospect that you're going to lose it. And this is how we see it. So now I take an opportunity and I ask a question from the audience. So what do you think is the biggest structural problem with current Western military industry?
Good question though. Do you have
There are many from the industry. You guys know it well, I'm sure.
Any clue, anyone?
No answers?
Okay.
All right, I'm going to tell it myself. First, things are too expensive.
Okay.
Number two, and this is interlinked problem, they are too little of supply. So, and it's fairly clear that Russians have put their emphasis on something that is not high performance and little of supply. Their focus is on high supply and lower performance. And this is how they're going to suppress the livelihood out of Ukraine right now. Can we put the next slide? How does it work here?
Oh, I think I can help you.
Oh yeah, thanks.
Well, a remote is definitely another weapon, but stage one. So.
Well, and we have identified that the problem in the market is clearly the highest when it comes to aerial threats. The all air defense infrastructure throughout the last 50 years were built against the threats that were mounted on helicopter, fighter jets, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles. And all of them were very scary and very good and high performance. But the fact of the matter was that they were measured in thousands or very low tens of thousands. And inherently, there was one element. Always the missiles to take down the aerial threats were cheaper than the targets themselves. Why it's important? It's important because it gave Russians, and also, looking from the West, the incentive not to, manufacture 1 million helicopters, because you knew that it's cheaper for them to take them down, and it's not economically effective. So this has been now turned upside down. The introduction of Shaheds, Orlan, Shaheds, all the FPV variants are in millions, in tens of millions now. These are the things that did not exist before, and the only remedy we got against them are the same old missiles that cost hundreds of thousands. And until we don't have cheaper solutions, this is gonna remain like that. So these large green bubbles did not exist before the war in Ukraine.
Okay.
And that's why there are no solutions against that. So what we are trying to do in Frankenburg, and I encourage all the other companies around the world, especially in Europe, to do the same in their categories. No, I don't know if you know this guy, but I think this is very spot on when it comes to, what does it mean for security in Europe. And what I encourage all the others to do, we need to make things cheaper. It doesn't matter how good it is, 70% good and in your warfighter's hand is better than 100% good and only existing in the Excel spreadsheets in 2035 deliveries. And we need to manufacture everything more, and not more in terms of 10%, 12%, 8%, as the current incumbents in the industry have done. Throughout 1,000 days of warfare, there is no functioning market economy in the defense industry in the West. We need to do things 100 times more, 1,000 times more if we want to win the war against Russia. And this is something that we try to do in Frankenburg. Thank you very much.
Well, now we know what Frankenburg is all about. Let's turn the mic to Kadi, actually, because again, I really want to know what you are putting us, below this or behind actually this idea that AI can serve democracies. Of course, AI can be a lot of different things, but once you're actually trying to mix and match it with saving the world, basically, and saving democracies and being on the good guy side, what do you have here?
Thanks so much, and thank you for having me. I want to caveat everything I'm going to say with one small fact, which is I'm 2 weeks into this job, so I'm definitely not the most eloquent speaker on Helsing AI, but I do have one thing that no one else in Helsing AI has, which is I'm the first and the only Estonian based in Estonia. So some of you might have seen this summer there was an announcement by Helsing AI and the Estonian government for Helsing to expand their operations here in Estonia, in the region, and also set up facilities. So I'm sort of the first manifestation of that. I can't see who's in the room, it's very light. I assure you I'm not the only manifestation of that, but here you go. But now back to the more important question, our mission and our products. So you're very right. I mean, you pointed out our sort of tagline, our motto, and this belief in the fact that software and AI in particular is already affecting and will increasingly affect outcomes on the battlefield, and hence will transform the industry, is something that pushed the founders to start this company. It is, as our motto also says, not just technology for any country. We're not willing to sell this to anyone. We pick very, very carefully who we work with because we believe fundamentally that we need to sort of give back or retain the technological edge in this technology. Now, what do we do? And to be honest, one of the main questions I get from people when I've told them that I'm joining is, so what's your product? What do you actually do? The second question is why I'm moving to Finland, but that's easier to clear up. And when you look at our presence on the internet, when you look at what our founders say, we are quite tight-lipped about our products. And one of the main, if not the main reason for that is that we work very closely with Ukraine, which means that we don't want to put too much information out in the public. But I'll still give you a bit of a sense of what we do. We work across multiple domains. We have our own sort of, let's say, own standing separate systems, both on reconnaissance as well as strike capabilities. And then we work also with defense primes, such as Airbus, with whom we have excellent collaboration. So our belief is that, yes, we need mass, but we need intelligent mass. And for that, we need to help make existing platforms more intelligent, for lack of better phrase, but also we need new capabilities that can produce at mass quickly, and we're seeing the effects in Ukraine.
There you go. So now, I mean, earlier this morning we were tackling also a question about DefenceTech with Cecilia Bönfeldt from Digital Europe. And this entire day was, of course, now the European Commission does have a defense commissioner, but seems to me that we're probably more ready as European and member state to create or to actually be able to build a European defense tech team more than a European defense per se itself. What's your take on this? I mean, do you think that you guys, I mean, being corporates or being startups, can actually bring or make a difference in this domain? Can we build a coherent, ethical, and secure defense tech ecosystem in Europe for Europe? Who wants to dive in first? Wow, I'm raising eyebrows, but Kadi.
Yeah, I can go. I mean, we absolutely do believe that. We, I guess, also are showing that in practice. I mean, let's say the ambition of the company is to be a pan-European company. Before setting up shop in Estonia, we already have presence in Western Europe, also other locations, but we are seeing that it is possible to do. Not easy, but possible to do. The problem in Europe, when you look at what the European Union can do, is it has a lot of money, but that money in defense predominantly goes into R&D, which is absolutely necessary as well. But at the same time, companies like ours also need contracts. So for us, the key is how do you switch from this sort of grant-based, R&D-based funding from the European Union's budget to actually getting contracts for companies that will deliver actual capabilities for countries.
And maybe to add on, we are working on the FCAS contract, which is a Future Combat Air System, which is today a Spanish, French, German program, to make sure that we are working on the future, on how to better defend Europe. And it's a long-term project. And key is that we are already using today components for an earlier availability, as FCAS is more the long-term project.
So, I mean, to be quite honest, Kusti, how can we make it happen, actually? I mean, are we on the threshold of making European defense tech a reality in terms of ecosystem?
Well, I think when it comes to European defense tech and where we are, then the wake-up call has been extremely low. It's type of sort of a very slow Sunday morning where you actually wake up like, I don't know, 4:30. There are some good things that have happened. 2017, there was the introduction of the defense fund. The NATO has done incredible stuff. The Kadi helped to set up the Diana thing. The NATO has set up the venture fund for 1 billion euros. But still, I think the predominant items in this discussion are twofold. First is the introduction of the term dual use. Well, what it essentially is doing defense without doing defense. So it's the whole nature of being apologetic about defense. We somehow are, or not we, but there are many people who still are a little bit afraid of doing this, allergic of doing this, somehow are keeping distance with that. There are these sort of moral dilemmas that, we should be doing defense, but we couldn't do any defense that would somehow harm people. That is, well, it's not going to function like that if we have the mission to somehow secure Europe. It's slowly moving. I think here in this stage, I think it's a good example. This conference has been ongoing for, well, many years. But it's the first time where it's the dedicated panel for defense tech. And this is ongoing, I think, with every single European conference. The defense tech is taking the sort of more prominent stage. Clearly, after 1,000 days of war in Europe, this is too slow in all parameters, but at least we're moving to the right direction.
And I think on this, I have a good example on how to use commercial products and to militarize it and to save years of development. As we know, in the past, we have developed NH90 and Tiger as pure military products, which took decades. That's why it's called NH90, because it was started in the 90s and fielded 20 years later. And now, for example, this week we fielded an H145 in the military version to the German army, which is a derivative of the commercial 145, and the development cycle was very, very short.
Well, actually, yeah. I mean, the defense sector has always been a great R&D, sandbox to develop, test out all those layers of innovation and breakthrough technologies, of course, and then probably at time of peace use it in a different, like features and applications.
And during many years there was no sense of urgency, which has completely changed.
Actually, that's a very good one. This sense of urgency changes everything when it comes to your own breakthrough technologies and the way you can actually have them come across the market. Either also, when it comes to your customers, who are basically governments and the Defense Department, this sense of urgency, they need them ready right here, right now?
Well, I think if you think of how the market might evolve, and what's the problem with the European market? It's very fragmented, and the way the market functions is that there is no of the large defense primes who would wake up in the morning without a contract. This is not how you do the business or product development in other sectors. The defense sector is the only standing behemoth that only does things if you have a product. In all the other sectors, it works that you sense the market, you see where the demand is, you want to sort of somehow design or mend it. And this is slowly changing. Helsing has raised hundreds of millions for in-house product development. Well, we are healthily financed to do that. And there are many others, especially US. And this is how the new products that are not defined by the customer needs, and the customer needs in defense is not, you know, half a page of requirements, 600 pages of technical data, what you need to correspond to. And then we are all, you know, somehow puzzled why things are so expensive and they are so interoperable and not interoperable and so forth. And this is changing. And the faster it changes, the better benefits it brings, the more venture money is gonna come to the market. And this is also that is gonna shake the incumbent the primes.
Kadi?
Just to add to that, I mean, the sort of understanding, an abstract understanding that we need to think more about effects was always there, right? No one went into a procurement process and thought, I want, you know, a really, really expensive, I want the most expensive capability that will take the longest to be delivered, right? But I think the shift now that we're seeing is happening because it's not any more abstract. You're seeing in Ukraine how other capabilities that are different, cheaper, smaller, whatever, can achieve that same effect. So I think this is sort of breaking through, and that will hopefully make a difference.
Well, speaking of Ukraine, and we were actually tackling the question of interoperability of those, again, multi-layers of defense tech when you're trying to manage one military operation, for instance, through a multi-domain combat cloud. If you take the example of Ukraine and if you take the example of Starlink, now you guys have a question about connectivity. I mean, if Starlink systems are not safe enough, I'm not saying they are, or they're not, but if they lack safety, then how can you make sure that the data that are going through your technologies are safe too? Because, I mean, this is definitely, you know, that type of, you know, like system where every single one relies on each other. So how can you make sure that your technology can interoperate safely, ethically, even though we're talking about war and warfare? How can you cope with this very thin, you know, like layers between ethics and safety, and still being able to, you know, like be efficient where they have to be efficient?
Yeah, one key topic is clearly that we have an open architecture and that you are system agnostic, because otherwise it's also not feasible that new systems get integrated easily, and you always have to be up to date on cybersecurity. And that's why I think it's the case for Airbus, but I know it from other companies as well, like Leonardo, that we are all increasing strongly the cybersecurity capabilities by even acquiring cyber companies to get state-of-the-art technology.
What about you?
Obviously, we violently agree with the support on open architectures, given that we're predominantly a software company. But I mean, going back to your question, I think the fact that sometimes sort of like ethical development and effectiveness are almost juxtaposed as not the right way to put it, because at the end of the day, if we want to be able to deploy in the countries that we want to deploy in, which is democratic countries, you just need to follow certain rules. So it's not really an either-or opportunity. But also it makes sense business-wise, because if you're selling a product, you want to make sure that it actually does what you say it does. So AI assurance obviously is a big topic, and for us it's not just a safety, ethical consideration, it's also a business consideration.
I'm very, very happy that I was the third one to answer that question, because I was supposed to answer with the correct one. That is the secure communication, you know, ESG, water compliance, everything is super important, cybersecurity, interconnectedness, and so forth. But at the same time, we need to keep in mind another question to the audience. How many times have Ukrainians asked for cybersecurity in their weapons list? How many times have they asked for secure communication devices? How many times they have asked for ESG approved technology somewhere? Well, we all know what the answer is: 0 times, because this is what they are not needing there. They need something that can confront the mass, something that can confront all these murderers, and this is the status. Status also not only with the governments who have been not able to provide Ukraine with necessary lethal aid, and also for European industry who haven't been able in 1,000 days to gear up their manufacturing. And yet we are speaking about all these elements that were so much illustrative to the decades of decline in Western defense, where all the efforts went to the same cybersecurities and secure communications, something that built extremely expensive and cumbersome entry barriers for other incumbents to enter the market. That is the nature of a lot of these restrictions, and this is something that needs to be dismantled if we want to build capabilities that actually deter Russians.
Well, I mean, building a secure and safe piece of technology is one thing, but it's quite different when you're at a time of political uncertainty. I'm getting back to my example with Starlink. Now, if you have this one CEO who CEOs Starlink, but who is also now part of an entity aside the future American administration, how do you deal with it?
Deal with the restrictions and the...
Well, deal with the uncertainty, because you never know when is going to pull on and out, or on and off, the capability of Starlink, or any capabilities of any connectivity devices that is going to be required for your technologies to be functioning and efficient.
Yeah, and today we already see cyber threats and attacks also, let's say, without being in an official war. So we need to even protect today our systems from all the attacks we get. Like we as a company, but also, let's say, the different states are being attacked already now on a daily basis without being in an official war. And I had been on a different panel on hybrid threats recently, and let's say at the end the whole audience agreed somehow that we are, if you are in tough words, we are already in a hybrid war. If you look at all the attacks we are facing daily.
But as we are...
Therefore, the protection from my point of view is key.
But are we as European able to be self-sufficient on connectivity?
Well, we have to be, because if we want to win the war, then clearly the mass is one of the solutions. That is something that we need to deliver. We need to manufacture more and all this, that's clear. But also what's evident is that we also need to have the technological supremacy. We also need strategic aid technologically. So we all know what's the issue, biggest issue in Ukraine. Ukraine cannot hit into the depths of Russia. What is the utility of that? The utility of that would be pushing all these aircraft closer inside Russia so they couldn't shoot these dumb fab bombs. Well, Europe needs to be able to do that. We need to be able to push them to 2,000 kilometers away. That would make everything associated with logistics, resupply, and people so much more difficult. And once it's so much more difficult, then it becomes so much more expensive and more cumbersome to somehow arrange. And this equals deterrence at the end of the day, because once the conducting of the war becomes so difficult for you, then you just wipe this idea off your head and you try to do something else. They're never going to stop doing this hybrid stuff. But hybrid stuff is not going to kill a whole generation of people or destroy the futures and hope of the country. And I think this is something that we can handle with much more ease and much more, let's say, resilience.
So what do we need? It can be about, like private-public partnerships. It can be about financing and better financing. It can be about, like a lot of different solutions. What do we need to achieve that?
Well, technologies and all is there. I mean, we need more financing, that's clear. It has been a choir of prime ministers for 10 years speaking about how the defense expenditure needs to be increased and 2% needs to be ceiling and all that. Well, the fact of the matter is that in 2024, in real terms, meaning adjusted with inflation, European nations are spending less on defense than they did in 2021 before the war. I mean, it makes your head explode. especially if you compare it with all these grandiose statements and all these selfies that all the prime ministers have done with Zelensky, and where they have emphasized how important defense expenditure is. Clearly, it needs to be times and times and times higher. Clearly, it needs to allocate a lot of more money into the lethal, long-range precision stuff. And clearly, this is where the advantage of all the defense startup becomes apparent. iPhone has sort of more capabilities than some of our most capable military appliances that we pay tens of millions of euros. So we all need to adopt that and somehow be not apologetic about investing into defense. I think at the end of the day, the solution is fairly easy. It starts from the vision. Vision needs to be that no Russians are going to European territory, never. And we're going to do everything to stop that. And if we got this cleared out, without no buts, without restrictions, without any derogations, then I think there are hundreds of millions of clever people in European Union to put all the other pieces into places when it comes to doctrines, procedures, peoples, trainings, and so forth.
But to be quite frank, can AI-powered autonomous weapon, comma cloud, compete with nuclear weapon?
Compete with what? Sorry.
With nuclear weapon. I mean, when you have a nuclear threat and when we're dealing with a nuclear superpower,
we're also
can your pieces of technology just be a more, like threatening proposition so that the other or the opponent actually de-escalate the conflict?
So not Estonia, but we, as an alliance, we're also a nuclear power. And deterrence has different steps. We just need to make sure that we do deter the adversary at this sort of lower threshold, and it doesn't get there. You asked, what else do we need? I mean, I said it in the beginning, but I'll say it again. Capital is not contracts. So it's still hard for defense tech startups to get capital. Helsing is an exception. We're hoping not to be an exception in the future. Yeah. But what we need in Europe is aggregated demand. And unless that becomes, you're not going to be able to sort of replicate that sort of success of building big defense tech unicorns. What else? Because you might raise a few rounds, but if you don't get contracts, you're not going to be successful in the long term. And the other thing, in addition to aggregated demand, is speed. For instance, in the US, you have a possibility to go from a proof of concept, where you basically show things work, to production contract in, if I'm not mistaken, around 6 weeks. In Europe, I mean, obviously not in the European Union level, but I think no European country does that sort of thing exist. The interesting thing is these sort of very quick mechanisms do exist when we procure for Ukraine, but when we procure for ourselves, these options are currently mostly not on the table.
And I think another key point is as well, if you look on European investments in the last 2 years, and also specifically in Germany, most of the money was going to the US, and we really need to still strengthen our own defense industry for the future.
So in the few minutes we have left on stage, let's think about brighter futures and probably see the glass half full. We're at war, but probably tomorrow we'll be at peace, hopefully. How do you transition your technologies from a wartime to peacetime? How can we, how can you keep on, benefiting from those technologies and your technologies when we are at a time of peace? AI, quite obvious. Missiles, I'm not sure.
Well, we're going to have missiles in every household soon, so we've got a plan for that. Well, clearly we're living in a totally different era now. The conventional warfare that was taboo for 70 years in Europe is back. Russia, I think by now they have already learned that doing this, you come out without any harm, without any punishment. We need to build deterrence that is not only credible in terms of nuclear, but also credible in terms of conventional capabilities. And I think the question, what happens once peace gets there, well, first we need to win the war in Ukraine to establish the peace on the terms that are favorable for us, and where we dictate the terms of the amount of weapons, amount of missiles, amount of AI, and amount of all other military stuff that we need. If it's going to be on the terms of Russians or the other murderers, then we keep on chasing our shadows.
Andrea?
Yeah, even at peacetime, we need to make sure that we can protect ourselves, because what we have seen, you never know what's coming. So it's not that, and I think that was the mistakes we have done in the past. We thought the Cold War was over, and we reduced our self-defense, and then we were caught by surprise somehow, and now we are at a system where many countries can maybe defend themselves for 1 or 2 days. So.
Kadi?
So 2 things. First of all, and you sort of alluded to it in the beginning, after the Second World War, during Cold War, we had this, like the trend was that because so much money was put into defense, predominantly in the US, I'm talking about DARPA, so the innovation trickled out of that innovation in defense into the civilian sector. Then, once we started all spending less money on defense, that the direction changed. So now it was the innovation coming from the civilian sector being brought into defense. And I think potentially now, given the sort of renewed focus on defense and hopefully also growing defense budgets, perhaps we can shift that trend. So that's one point. But the main point is really, even if we're at peacetime, we still need the capabilities to deter. I guess there, the key is, how do you have production facilities which ensure that you can ramp up production quickly. So you're not, keeping your factories going on like full steam all the time, but you're able to get to that capacity quickly. And we're seeing very, very interesting companies coming into this sector who are revolutionizing production, autonomizing it. So I think we're sort of on the precipice of something quite exciting there.
Well, I guess it's definitely a great takeaway from the 2020s, keeping on being agile and creative. Thank you so much to the 3 of you for those points here. Outinnovation and Outinnovating, actually, the opponent. DefenceTech as definitely a future. Thank you so much. They deserve some applause.
Thank you.